On Sunday morning, June 21st, the governor of Russian-occupied Crimea sent a message to every gas station on the peninsula. Stop selling fuel immediately. Not rationing, not limiting. Stop. From that moment on, no private citizen, no business, no vehicle on Crimea could buy gasoline. Only state institutions received supply. Everyone else, nothing. That is not a wartime precaution. That is a collapse of civilian fuel supply on a peninsula home to over 2 million people. And it happened because Ukraine just set the oil depot in Kerch on fire. Ukraine has been saying for weeks it intends to turn Crimea into an island. As of this Sunday, it is starting to look exactly like that. Let's go back to what actually happened in the hours before that order was issued. In the early hours of June 21st, Ukraine launched a massive drone strike against Crimea. Multiple explosions were reported across the peninsula. Social media footage showed a burning oil depot in the port city of Kerch, a large smoke column visible for kilometers. The fuel terminal in Kerch harbor was on fire, and the port of Kavkaz on the Russian side of the Kerch Strait was also struck, a site that houses both a fuel terminal and an oil depot. Ukrainian President Zelensky confirmed the target specifically: maritime logistics infrastructure used to transport oil into the Krasnodar region and the oil storage facility in Kerch. He called these attacks part of Ukraine's long-term sanctions against Russian energy infrastructure. The Russian-installed governor, Sergei Aksyonov, acknowledged 4 dead and 28 wounded, without naming a single target hit. And then, at 9 in the morning, he ordered every gas station on the peninsula to shut down civilian sales. This is not a drill. This is not a temporary precaution pending repairs. Aksyonov used no end date, no timeline. The order reads simply, fuel for state institutions only until further notice. So how did it come to this, and why now? The answer is that this didn't happen overnight. Ukraine has been systematically working toward this moment for months, and the Kerch strike is simply the latest step in a campaign that has been compressing Crimea's fuel supply from every direction simultaneously. Fuel on Crimea has been rationed for weeks already. Russia's own energy ministry admitted supply problems at the start of June, before this strike, before this fire. The civilian shortage was already real. Let's trace the full sequence because it matters. The railway. In early June, Ukrainian strikes forced the complete suspension of train traffic on Crimea, the rail corridor that carries bulk freight, including fuel, from the Russian mainland. The bridges. On Friday alone, the General Staff reported fresh strikes on railway bridges used for military transport and resupply to Crimea. The road bridge connecting Kerch to the Russian mainland was closed for car traffic Sunday night following the strikes. The highways, the Azov Brigade and the unit known as Nemesis, have been systematically hunting military fuel trucks and supply convoys along the M14 highway, the critical road link between occupied Mariupol and Crimea. Medium-range drones find and destroy those convoys before they arrive. Rail severed, road under attack, bridge closed, harbor on fire. No single one of these alone would be decisive, but all 4 simultaneously with no repair timeline in sight for any of them. That is what a logistical stranglehold actually looks like. Not a dramatic explosion, a slow, compounding closure of every route in and out. The Ukrainian Defense Minister, Mikhailo Fedorov, was direct. Ukraine intends to isolate Crimea through drone strikes by cutting its logistics routes. He added, "It looks like Crimea will become an island in the near future, with consequences for Russia that could be very unexpected." That phrase deserves attention, because Crimea is not only a military staging ground, it is also Russia's most popular tourist destination, with hundreds of thousands of Russian civilians traveling there each summer. Reports this week already describe tourists struggling to find fuel to drive home. But it's worth pausing on the civilian dimension first, because it reveals something the military numbers alone don't capture. Crimea under Russian control was supposed to be a showcase, a living demonstration that Russian annexation brought stability, investment, and normalcy. For 12 years, Moscow promoted it as a success story. Tourists came, resorts opened, bridges were built. What happens to that narrative when a governor tells 2 million people they cannot buy gasoline? Crimea is the platform from which Russia launches attacks across southern Ukraine. It hosts air defense systems, naval assets, logistics hubs, and forward command positions. Every liter of fuel denied to Crimea is a liter not available for those operations. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry confirmed this directly, noting that the degradation of Russian logistics on Crimea is already producing measurable effects on the number of Russian attacks along the front line. According to Energy Intelligence, a US-based energy research firm, Ukrainian attacks have now disabled 1/3 of Russia's total refinery capacity. 1/3. Not a marginal disruption, a structural degradation of Russia's ability to produce and move fuel inside its own territory, on its own peninsula, in its own occupied city. And Zelensky's framing is deliberate. He called it long-term sanctions, not retaliation, not a battlefield strike, sanctions. The language of economic pressure applied systematically over time, with the explicit goal of making Russian military operations unsustainable. And consider what that means for a Russian military that is already operating without fiscal reserves, with a central bank chief who has vanished from public view, and a war budget that burned through its entire annual deficit in just 4 months. Every additional liter of fuel that has to be rationed, rerouted, or simply written off represents a cost that falls on an economy that has no cushion left to absorb it. Here's what I want you to hold in your mind. 3 weeks ago, we tracked the disappearance of Russia's central bank chief, in a bank run the likes of which Russia hadn't seen in 30 years. 2 weeks ago, we tracked Moscow's largest refinery struck twice in 4 days, fire visible over the capital itself. Last week, we tracked Azov drones circling Mariupol's port, hitting substations and ships, cutting off Crimea's highway supply routes. And now this. A governor ordering gas stations closed, a bridge shut, a harbor burning, tourists stranded, military supply degraded. Each of these reads as a separate story in isolation. Together, they describe a single process, the methodical compression of Russia's ability to sustain a war economy, a military occupation, and normal civilian life at the same time. The fuel is running out, the reserves are gone. And Crimea, the crown jewel of Putin's 2014 expansion, the symbol of Russian power in the Black Sea, can no longer keep its gas stations open. And that is precisely what makes this campaign so difficult for Moscow to respond to. A conventional military offensive has a visible center of gravity you can mass forces against. You can reinforce a front line, you can counterattack a position. But how do you counterattack a fuel shortage? How do you push back against a closed bridge or a burning depot in a city you already control? Russia is losing ground to a campaign that has no front line, only a tightening circle of denial, applied from the air, with weapons too small and too numerous to stop. There is no single dramatic moment where this war turns. There is only this. Substation by substation, depot by depot, bridge by bridge, until the peninsula runs dry.